Hey everyone, today we're taking apart the AMD RX 5700 XT. This is a non-functional model, it's a mechanical sample. We have a functional model as well that we'll be taking apart after this to put thermocouples on it. But this is the same board, same cooler, same everything as our functional model. It just allows us to keep doing some testing while we still do a teardown. So we're taking this apart today. We're gonna look at the VRM components, the cooler assembly, see if there's any glue hidden in there, and see the overall build quality of AMD's 5700 XT. Before that, this video is brought to you by us and the Gamers Nexus Toolkit on store.gamersnexus.net. Our brand new toolkit just launched and contains 10 custom-made drivers for video card disassembly, repasting, and teardowns. The 8 core tools are made of high-quality chromium vanadium alloy steel that's built for long service life and resistance to wear during use. The other 2 tools are carbon steel hex heads that were custom ground down for capacitor clearance on video cards. All the tools are easily mounted to a pegboard or stored in the GN-made tool bag for easy transport. Learn more at the link in the description below. So here it is. This is AMD's new blower cooler on the Radeon 5700 XT. Couple of immediate comments. When I was asked by AMD just casually what I thought of the cooler design, I said, I think Batman called and he wants his Batmobile back. But that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. Another thing that is maybe a little amusing is we had a Patrick Stone, who did the wiring in our office for Ethernet, came by. He had not seen this card before. He saw it on the table and he said, yikes, what happened to it? So this dent is intentional, just before anyone gets confused. That is something AMD meant to do. So we did not drop it, although Linus is training me. I'm his apprentice. So card is an early revision. We're gonna take apart our production sample as well when we are done with standard testing and put thermocouples on it. That'll be done before the review. If there are any differences between the two, then this video won't go up at all. So if this video is up, then they are identical. So let's start with just the backplate. Backplate's got a couple PH1 sized screws, Phillips screws. We're just using the GN toolkit on store.gamersnexus.net. You can pick these up. They are brand new. And thanks to all of you who have picked them up already. It's tremendous support and allows us to keep operating with good independence. And then I'm on top of the GN mod mat as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got the old AMD hot surface sticker. Haven't seen that since probably the 290X era is the last time we saw one of those warnings. Well, no thermal pads on the back plate. That is disappointing. I don't believe that. Hang on. We can at least take the back plate off of our testing model. I need to do stock thermal testing on some of this, the components on this, which is why I don't want to disassemble the whole thing. But let's just make sure the back plate's the same. Man, I think there's some debug components on our mechanical sample that are not on the final sample. So what's going to happen is I'm going to end up sending BuildJoy both of these photos and ask him to explain a few things to us. Like this. I'm not sure what that is. It says GH15E, but I'm not sure what it is. We can ask him if he knows. And that's on the mechanical sample, but not the final one. And then this, same story for that, same story for that. So I guess we're going to end up opening both of them. But this one will have to wait a little bit. So anyway, there's no thermal pads on the back plate. That's the point that I was annoyed about. All right, so I'll set this aside. This needs to do some more testing. Anyway, back to this. The VRM components are all the same, at least, even though there's a few extra components on the back of PCB, and the cooler is going to be the same. But pretty interesting. So the reason for disappointment about the back plate is that this is actually like aluminum, and it's a good heatsink surface, and you could pull a bit of extra heat through the PCB. I mean, it's not the end of the world. End of the day, you're not changing the thermals of the GPU, you're changing the thermals of the components on the other side, but there's no reason not to. I guess it's kind of the point we're making. So anyway, under that, there's these 3 screws go to the blower, And you can see that right there. Looks like the same one used on the Vega designs for the mounting. And then 1, 2, 3, 13, I think, screws for the rest, other than the 4 for the GPU. Let's start with the GPU. This is going to be a PH0. It's PH0 driver, which is also in our toolkit. And once we have this off, ideally what happens is the whole heatsink falls off the card, and that's it. But on these reference models by both NVIDIA and AMD, that is not the case. We have to go and remove all these as well. I'm just tracking the screws on the mod mat as well, although this card looks pretty simple. I don't think I'm gonna need the reference at the end of the day, but it does give you a visualization of where the screws are laid out. There's another I/O screw in the back, or in the front of the card sticking through. So these are going to be longer. We're going to leave those fan screws in there for now and see if the design's changed at all from Vega, if you have to remove them to pull the cooler off. I think you do, though. So PH1 for the screws that are in DisplayPort and HDMI. All right, so I/O plate comes off. Card's still going to be stuck because of the screws holding the fan in. In past Vega models, these 3 screws were actually a different size than the rest of the screws, but had the same head. So that was annoying, but it looks like they've fixed that. That's good. 35217 controller on the back, which is on the production model that we just opened as well. And then it should be a thermal pad in here, which is part of why I wanted to use a mechanical model first to verify if it's a thermal pad instead of paste, because if it's a pad, then we have to take some more care with disassembly and reassembly. We did a lot of thermal pad testing on Radeon 7. Actually, I'll get a sheet to demonstrate it for you. This is from Radeon 7. And so this is pressure paper that we use. And what you do is you just apply it, and then you mount the cooler and see where the pressure is. And so this is just Radeon 7 mounting pressure. You can see what you want to see is this whole square should be red. And this is different mounts, so different times of applying the cooler. And on none of them did we get full coverage. There's always blank spots in the middle, which we ended up trying a thermal pad replacing it with paste, because the paste should be better than the HMO3. The Hitachi HMO3 pad is what they're using here, and it is a high-end thermal pad. It's got good thermal conductivity, but it's not all about thermal conductivity, which if you just look at the numbers and you see, I don't know, maybe 20 instead of 6, then 20 you would think is better. But in reality, it's more about contact pressure and thinness of the material. And with thermal paste, you can get a thinner application, which will have better thermal transfer characteristics than this if you can have an equal mount. But with the Radeon 7 card, the mount was bad enough that the extra thickness of the thermal pad plus the malleability of the thermal pad, while still having the thickness to reach down to the GPU from the cold plate, those two things allowed this problem to be sidestepped. Not resolved, but worked around. And that's why they used the thermal pad, in my opinion. That's my theory for why they used it. AMD has some other potential defenses or justifications of using the pad, in that it is a potentially better long-term solution, because as thermal paste ages on every GPU, it gets bad cracks. A lot of the times companies use Shin-Etsu paste or Dow Corning. This is Dow Corning paste. This is actually what Asus uses. We bought a lot of this. So that stuff doesn't age well, and a thermal pad will age better. So in AMD's defense, it's reasonable for that use. But we think the real reason is for mounting pressure. Anyway, they're still using that, and haven't done a mounting pressure test yet, but we could do that separately. As for the rest, if you did want to disassemble your own Radeon AMD reference model card at some point, just be aware that there's probably a thermal pad on there. And if there is, even though it's the HMO3, which is a nice one, it is at some point going to start falling apart as you disassemble and reassemble it. So you do need to be careful of that. And if you replace with paste, you can and on Radeon 7, we were eventually successful with it. But in order to replace this thermal pad successfully with a paste, what you need to do when you reassemble the card is for this thing, the retention bracket, you need to add a small washer underneath each of these 4 screws, and that'll increase the mounting pressure enough that you can get the cooler to come down low enough to contact the GPU, and that solves the mounting issue. So you just need like 4 plastic washers, basically the same kind you would find in an EK Waterblocks mounting kit. All right, so cooler, we'll start there. Thermal pad we've gone over thoroughly. You can see, well, maybe depending on the camera angle, you might be able to see some small circular divots in the bottom here. And if the camera ever catches the light correctly, they appear, there's one here, 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 here. And those are from the vapor chamber. So we actually have footage from a Cooler Master factory that we can hopefully drop in here of, I got to build a vapor chamber in big air quotes there. They stood next to me and told me how to do the powder application, stuff like that of the vapor chamber. But you can see the inside of one in that video. And that's all that is, so vapor chamber plus the cylinders to hold it up. The blower fan is going to be Delta. It is a, let's see. If you ever need to replace it, the model number is BFB1012SHA01, and it's a 12 volts, 2.4 amp fan if you needed to replace that, which is quite a lot of power for a fan. But it does go over 5,000 RPM from memory, and that'll be in the review. The rest of this we need to separate so we can see the internals of the chamber. It looks like there's a screw in here and here and there. Those are all PH1 size, I think. Yes, PH1 size. As for the cables I disconnected, this one next to the screwdriver, that should probably be an LED cable. And this one is obviously the fan cable. Oh, those are some massive screws. Check that out. And Loctite, pre-applied. I will say that I appreciate having the mechanical sample this time because taking the cooler apart with the production sample always sucks because you don't know if you're going to be able to get the thermal pads back on the way they came out. So even if the board components are slightly different, like the addition of 2 of those or 3 of those back there, this part is made much easier for us to go in greater depth. Okay, aluminum base plate, pretty simple. So you've got shroud. Shroud, I was correct on this. That is an LED cable. You can normally identify them because it's just a red and a black wire, ground and power. So LED, shroud, very simple. This shroud has on the opposite side of on the base plate side, there's a guide here, a flow guide. So the fan sits in here, and this is standard for every blower fan basically ever put on a GPU. And even though the front end of these things kind of looks like it can pull air in, because there's this heatsink here, and you've got the hole here that the heatsink is shown through. Actually, there you go. That's made easier. So if you just look at it, it kind of looks like it pulls air in through here, but that's not what happens. And it's the same with the old NVIDIA cards. Air comes in through here, and there's no channel between these two, or very limited of one if there is. And that means it's guiding the air straight through the fin stack, which is an aluminum fin stack. Interested in why this part is not covered, but the other is. Why would that be? Is it because of the dent? Maybe. These might be soldered or TIG welded together. I'm not sure. But it does not push out, so. What I wanted to do was push the heatsink out and flip it and see if the shroud would still fit. If they just eliminated the top of the flow guidance to accommodate the dent in the shroud, that would be kind of amusing. But anyway, aluminum fin stack, vapor chamber on the bottom, partially identifiable because of that, which is where it's sealed, vacuum sealed. And some additional fin surface area over here, some fins over here, not a whole lot, but enough to maybe help a bit with the MOSFET cooling. This is located near the MOSFETs and inductors. And yes, This sits right on top of the MOSFET, so those have a direct heat path, heat sink, and then the fan. I want to try and get this out just because it is a mechanical. Like, it's not like it's the whole purpose is to be disassembled. And then we could also cut it open. Don't think we're breaking the part I want to break. Oh, maybe. This will be the first time we've separated this part of the cooler because it doesn't need to be reused. So that is really cool. Good opportunity. We might end up breaking some of the fins off. The MOSFET fins are, I think, going to be compromised, but it's not usable anyway. So we have not had that opportunity before. So I will go ahead and say a thank you to AMD for providing a mechanical sample. Not sure this is what they had in mind, but we don't get to do this normally because it is a destructive form of disassembly. Okay, so we got the thing off, and this is where I'm not 100% positive what the solution is to bond the copper part of the vapor chamber to the base plate. So feel free to post what you think that might be below. My initial thought was a really strong thermal adhesive, but the fact that it can't be really removed, it felt a bit sticky, but it can't be removed, and it stripped the metal where they were contacted and pulled apart, tells me it's maybe a more permanent solution, like, I don't know, a weld or solder or something, but not sure. Let us know what you think. There is a bit of, you can see like some oxidation or corrosion on either side of it, but that shouldn't really matter. The reason you would bond them together that strongly, though, is for thermal transfer efficiency, because the base plate is responsible solely for sinking heat from the VRM components, but also the memory, which are all in this area, and so that allows the vapor chamber to effectively sink both the GPU and the memory heat, which does mean that the GPU is sharing its cooling solution. So that's not ever the greatest, but it's often better than the alternative, which is overheating your memory. So that's why they do that. What do you think is the best solution to cut through the vapor chamber safely and open it up? Okay, so we took a couple approaches to try and drill this out to demonstrate what we know is in there, but it's not, we can't really get the perfect demonstration. So if we haven't already, we'll drop in the clip, or we'll do it again, of Cooler Master's factory when we were there in China, assembling sort of the inside part of a vapor chamber. That's what it looks like. There is an air gap in there, hence the name vapor chamber. But in this one, we ran into, so we first tried an angle grinder, and the problem here is we think that the metal may have been like folding back over itself, or we were filling in or resealing via heat the small opening that we were hoping to get with the cross section. And then what I ended up doing was taking just a metal drill bit to punch a small hole, and then I took this one. Oh, there's no battery in here. But then I took this one, which is a stepped bit, and that is what we used for our previous Cooler Master Q500L video where we fixed it, if you can call it that. So this, you just kind of can keep drilling deeper to widen the hole. And we could go a little more. Battery needs to charge, but yeah, you can see a little bit. Unfortunately, it's not the demonstration we were hoping. It's not as spectacular as we were hoping, but internally there's a small gap in there where you can see where the actual part of the vapor chamber is, where the couple drops of liquid would be. So anyway, that's your pseudo cross section. It is very thick copper though. But let's move on from the cooler and look at the PCB. Yes, all of these are 3170s. So I'll send that information and some photos of the board of the, well, I'll probably wait till I take apart the retail sample and send that to BuildZoid along with this one. And he can look at the PCB quality for us for our channel. So I'll have a separate video on the PCB analysis, but 3170s for the VRM, This one is a 7+1 phase, and then the 5700 XL should be a 6+1, I think, but I haven't taken that apart yet. So this one uses Samsung GDDR6. We've got a 35217 IR controller up here. Big blank space on the PCB where the fan is. And then the rest of this, like I said, I'll send to BuildZoid and we'll figure out if there are any other differences with this and the retail sample. And if they are, they'll end up in this video, but I'm thinking there's probably not any other than what we already saw. Definitely got some of it to go away. I don't know if you can see it, but it is less flat here. Or I mean more flat here than this one. You can feel the difference. Okay, so that'll wrap this one. We drilled some holes in the vapor chamber. You can kind of see the actual vapor chamber part. So that's cool. Like I said, not as spectacular as we hoped, but we do have footage from those factories to help visualize it. You can sort of see it though. I think if I took like a really skinny file and got in there, then it would work. Speaking of things falling off the shelf behind me, also a lot of people commenting about how these look dented. We fixed that on this part. Couldn't fix this part of the dent, but yeah, I just thought I'd try and smash out the dent, and it worked for part of the card. So that's gonna be it. The PCB analysis we'll have up by BuildZoid separately, and the die itself is unexciting. AMD doesn't print their text on the dies, so that's nothing really to see there other than the die, and we already have die sizes online. I guess I'll note this one was assembled in Taiwan, which is not too common, but board partners are starting to move manufacturing there because of the tariffs, so AMD's a bit ahead there. But that'll be it for this one. Check back. The review should already be live at this point, so go watch the review if you haven't. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net to pick up a toolkit like the one I was using today with all the different screwdrivers you'll need for this card and lots of other ones, and patreon.com/gamersnexus as well. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all next time.